Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Eli and I run my own small business, Crochet Made by Eli. I do post weekly videos here on YouTube for really anything crochet related, but this week's video is a tutorial on how to make my granny stitch bucket hats. I am going to give some information about this hat and the pattern before we get into it, so if you're interested in just the pattern, I will put the timestamp on the screen so you can skip right up to that point. So I've made a ton of these hats. As you guys can see, I love doing ones with just two colors, especially two different shades. I've got a pink one, green one, and then I've got my Pride collection of hats. So as you can see, you can use a whole bunch of different colors. I do find they look best when you use at least two colors, but it's completely up to you. I do also prefer to make these in cotton because a bucket hat is typically a summer hat. And you want them to be light and flowing. You don't want it to be really thick and warm on your head. But with that being said, you can absolutely use whatever type of yarn you want to use. This video is going to be going over the pattern, but it's not a beginner-friendly tutorial in the sense that I am not going to be teaching you how to do these techniques. So you will need to have prior crochet knowledge to make this hat. Any terminology that I use is going to be written in the description below, as well as all of the materials, but I'm also going to go over it in this video. So the terms that you need to know are pretty simple. You'll need to know how to do a magic ring, you'll need to know how to chain, how to slip stitch, and then you'll need to know how to make a double crochet and a single crochet, and that's about it. I will not be going over color changes in this video, as I do have a couple other videos going over that, so feel free to use whichever method you find works best for you, and I'm going to be just skipping that step for this specific video. That way we can keep it just the pattern. Now this tutorial is going to go over how to make this slightly wavy, slightly ruffly brim. So when you wear these hats, the brim does stick out a bit with a slight ruffle, so it doesn't stick straight out, but it's also not super ruffly. It's a nice light wave. I have made these hats with a variety of brims, anything from a fully straight brim to a really full ruffly brim. So if you guys are interested in learning how to make those changes, I can absolutely post a second video. Just let me know in the comments. And lastly, before we get into it, if you guys do end up making anything using this tutorial, you are absolutely free to sell those pieces. Just please make sure you credit me as the pattern designer. So now let's get into the tutorial. When it comes to the yarn, like I mentioned, I do suggest using a cotton because I find that this works best to make a light and flowy hat. However, any weight for yarn will do. I'll be using the Loops and Threads Classic Cotton in 8 different colors so that I can make a very pretty rainbow hat. But again, the amount of colors that you use is completely up to you, so feel free to use as many or as few colors as you'd like. I'll be using a 5mm hook, and if you have a looser tension, I suggest using the same size. However, if you do have a tight tension, you may want to size your hook up a bit. I will be sharing the measurements of my hat as we go along so that you can see how big it should be and if you match the gauge. You will need a darning needle so that you can weave in your ends once you're done your hat, and you'll need a pair of scissors. I suggest using a stitch marker, but it's not required. And finally, you may want to use a tape measure so that you can make sure your hat is the right size, but again, this is suggested and not required. We're going to start by making a magic ring, so you can do this using whatever method you like best. If you're not comfortable with a magic ring, you can also chain 3, slip stitch to the first chain, and use that as your starting magic ring. We're going to be placing 10 double crochet inside this circle. I start all of my rounds using a standing double crochet, also called a stacked single crochet, so I will show you how I do that. However, if it's complicated or you don't feel like doing it, you can start with a chain 2 and then do your 10 double crochet. To make my standing double crochet, I'm going to start with making a single crochet. So we have a chain 1 and a single crochet. Then I'm going to insert my hook into the front post of this stitch. So we're going to insert it right here, picking up the front leg or that front post of the stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook so you can see I have just that front post, yarn over and pull through. So now I have 2 loops on my hook, and then I'm going to complete a second single crochet by yarning over and pulling through. And that is how I do a standing double crochet. Again, if you prefer, you can start by chaining 2 and then doing your 10 double crochet. Now I'm just going to do 9 more. I've got my 10 double crochet, so I'm just going to pull my tail tight to close up that circle. And we're going to end this round by slip stitching to our very first double crochet. Once I do my slip stitch, I am going to pull this tight because we're not going to be working into those slip stitches. We're just using it to close the round. Now, just as a disclaimer, I do have a fairly loose tension, and I find that 10 double crochets is the perfect amount for me. For some people, especially if you have a tighter tension, you might find that this actually makes the start of your hat too pointed. So if you place your 10 and as you continue on, your hat has a bit of a point at the top, you may want to add 1 or 2 more double crochets into your starting ring. With my tension, 10 is the perfect amount, and you can see this makes a very flat circle. At the end of each round, we're going to slip stitch over to where we want to start the next round. We're going to be working in between each double crochet. So instead of working into the stitch up here, we're going to be working into the spaces between them. So we're working into that space, and then we're going to work into that space, and so on. So we're not working into that V on the top, we're working into the space in between the posts of our double crochets. Now to start round 2, I always slip stitch 1 more. So I'm going to go and slip stitch over to the next stitch, pull that tight, and now we're in a good position to start working in between these 2 double crochets. I'll be changing my yarn after every round, so I'm going to do that and then show you round 2. For round 2, we're going to be placing 2 double crochet in between each of the previous ones. So I'm going to start with a chain 1, and then I'm going to go into that space between each stitch and place my standing double crochet. Then I'm going to go and place a second double crochet in that same space. Then we're going to repeat this around, 2 double crochet in each space. Alright, after you've placed 2 double crochet in each space, we're going to slip stitch to end the round. So just going into the top of our first double crochet, and we're going to pull that tight. For our next round, we want to start in the space in between these 2, so we're going to slip stitch 2 more stitches. And now we're in the right position to start round 3. For round 3, we're going to be placing 3 double crochet in each of the spaces. So start with a chain 1, I'll do my standing double crochet, and then 2 more in the same space. And then we're going to repeat this all the way around, 3 double crochet in each space. Once you reach the end of the round, we are going to slip stitch to end. For the next round, we're going to be working in a slightly different spot. We'll be placing a set of 2 double crochet in between each cluster, but we're also going to be doing 2 double crochet in the middle of each cluster. So we're going to slip stitch 1 more time, and this is going to get us to the right starting place. We're going to be working right in the middle of our cluster of 3. So I prefer to work right here in between the first and second one. Now if you want to, you can work into the middle double crochet up here into the actual stitch, but I find it makes your clusters a little bit higher in that place, and you can see the difference between these clusters and these ones. It'll make a little more sense after the round, but you're going to start by slip stitching into the middle, and then we can start round 4. So for round 4, we're going to be placing 2 double crochet in our space in the middle of our cluster. So we're going to start with our chain 1 and then go in between our cluster to place our standing double crochet. So that's our first double. Then we're going to place a second one in that same spot. So we've got 2 double crochet. Then in the space between 2 clusters, we're going to place 2 double crochet. So that's going to be our pattern for the round. So working inside of the cluster, we'll place 2 double crochet. And then working between 2 clusters, 2 more. Coming up to the end of the round, we'll be finishing off with our 2 double crochet in between 2 clusters. And then we can slip stitch to end the round. For round 5, we're going to be going back to our normal, working in between 2 clusters. So we need to do 2 more slip stitches to get us to the right position. So that's 1 and 2, and then we're ready to start round 5. For round 5, we're going to be working 3 double crochet into each space. So starting with our chain 1, we'll place 3 double crochet. So we've got 3 double crochet. Our next space is in between these 2. So make sure that you're not skipping over any of our clusters of 2. We need to make sure we have 3 in every single space. Once you get back to the beginning, we're going to end it with a slip stitch as always. And then to get into the position for the next round, we are going to slip stitch across 3 stitches. So we did our very first one to close, and then we're going to do 1, 2, and 3. And now we're in the right position for round 6. Before we start round 6, we are going to need to measure our hat and make sure that this is big enough. So grabbing our measuring tape, when we measure from side to side, we should be right around 5.5 inches. You can see mine is a little bit past 5.5, closer to 6, which just means I have a little bit of a loose tension today, but that's totally fine. If your hat is significantly smaller, at least 5 inches or smaller, it may not be big enough yet. And in that case, I suggest repeating rounds 4 and 5 and then moving on to the sides. But if it's only slightly too small, anywhere between the 5 to 6 inch mark, it should be fine, especially if you're using a yarn that is stretchy and will loosen a bit as you wear it. At this point, your hat should be fully flat as well. Like I mentioned in the beginning, if you find that that your first round is spiking up or looks a bit like a triangle, you have 2 choices. You can either increase your hook size to have a looser tension, or you can try adding 1 or 2 more double crochets in the beginning. That would mean you would start with 12 double crochet, then you would have 24, 36, and so on. So just make sure you're paying attention to the specific yarn that you're using, your tension, and how your hat is looking. For the next 9 rounds, we're going to be repeating the exact same round, which is 3 double crochet in between each cluster. So after this round, our hat is going to start curving down and looking like an actual hat. It's going to be a bit bowl shaped, and we're going to continue this round until it's long enough. For me, this means the hat is going to be 7 inches from the top down to the side, and when I put it on my head, it should be sitting just past my ears. So for the round, we're going to chain 1 and then place 3 double crochet in every single space. Since this round is going to be repeating for at least 9 rounds, I'm going to do this off camera and meet you guys back after the side of my hat is done. Alright, so after my 9 rounds of the side, this is what mine's looking like. So we're going to take out our measuring tape at this point and make sure that this is long enough. So when we measure from the very top down to the side, we should be at right around 7 inches. If your hat has not reached 7 inches yet, you can just repeat this side round until it has reached the length you want. I'm also going to show you what it looks like on me so you can see where I like it to hit. So this is the length that I like my hats to be. You can see that it's just covering like the tips of my ears. It's not covering my eyebrows at all. So I find this is a good length, and then I'll start the brim, which is just going to stick out from here. But again, just do it to what length works for you. I find it's better to have it a little bit longer than too short, because too short just looks a little bit weird. But again, keep in mind your tension, the yarn you're using, and if your hat is going to stretch much while you're wearing it. So at this point, we're now going to move on to start our increase rounds. So this is going to be round 15 for me, but this is going to be the first round of the brim. So I'm just one spot short of where I want to be, so I just need to do my third slip stitch to get to where I want to be to start my round. I'm going to chain 1, and then we're going to be placing 4 double crochet in each space. So that is 4 double crochet in between our 2 clusters of 3, and we're just going to repeat this for the entire round. 4 double crochet in every single space. Once you've finished your round, we are going to end with a slip stitch as usual. And then to get in the right placement for the next round, we're going to do 2 more slip stitches. So 1 and 2. For the next round, we're going to be working inside of our cluster of 4 and in between each cluster of 4. So now we are in the right position to start working right there. So we're going to start with a chain 1 as usual, and then we're going to be placing 3 double crochet in our first space, which is right here inside of our cluster of 4. So we're going to go in that space and place 3 double crochet. So that's our first cluster. Then we're going to work in the space between our clusters of 4. So 3 double crochet right there. So this is going to be our pattern. We're going to work inside our cluster of 4 and then between our cluster of 4. Getting back to the beginning of the round, we're going to slip stitch to end as usual. And then to get into the right position for the next round, we're going to do 3 more slip stitches. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And then we're in the right spot to start the next round. We're going to start with a chain 1, and then we're going to place 3 double crochet in between each cluster. So we've got 3 double crochet, and we're going to repeat that for the entire round. Once you reach the end of the round, we're going to slip stitch as usual, but all we need to do is the 1 slip stitch to join the round. So I've placed my 1, I'm going to tighten it, and then we're going to move on to the final round. For this final one, we're going to be using single crochets instead, and we're going to work into the actual stitches and not the spaces between. We'll start with a chain 1, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet into each stitch. So I've chained 1, then I'm going to go back into that same stitch and place a single crochet, and then we're just going to single crochet all the way along. I find this makes the border look a little bit more secure, a little bit thicker. For some designs, I will do the same color for the last row as I did the previous one and just make a little bit of a thicker color. For this one, I'm doing orange just to continue the rainbow. So we're going to do this all the way around, And because this is our final round, I prefer not to end with a slip stitch. Instead, I close using the needle method, and I will show you that as well. If you prefer to do a slip stitch, absolutely do what works best for you, but I'll show you the method I use. All right, so once we've reached the beginning, like I said, we're not going to end with a slip stitch. Instead, we are going to snip our yarn, and we want to make sure we have a long enough tail that we can easily weave our end in. So I'm just going to snip that. And then I'm just going to pull my yarn up and out. So you can see this is not connected at all, it's very loose. And we can go and grab our darning needle so that we can close it. So we're going to start with threading our needle. And what we're going to be doing is wrapping the yarn around to imitate one of the regular stitches so that there's no clear start and end to the round. So at the top here, this is the very first stitch that we did. That's the first stitch of the round. We're going to skip that first one and go into the second one here. So I'm inserting my needle right into the stitch underneath both of those loops. I'm going to pull my yarn through, adjust it a little bit, and pull it tight. Then we're going to go back into the last stitch of our round. That's where our yarn is coming out of. And we're going to insert our needle back into the same place it's coming out of. So that's straight down, right? We're going to go straight down and through that loop on the back. So we're going to go on the back of it, there's 2 loops. We're going to pull our yarn through, and then I do a little adjustment to match the tension. So I use my needle to pull up the one loop and pull that tight, and you'll do that until it matches the tension. Now we do need to secure this fully on the back, so what I'm going to do is take my needle and go into that back loop of the other stitch. So this is the first stitch of our round. I'm going to go down that back loop and pull that tight, but make sure you're not pulling it too tight where you're going to mess up the top of the stitch. So do an adjustment if you need to, pull it tight, and then we're going to place a knot right here to make sure it is fully secured. Then you can go in, weave in your ends as normal. Don't forget to weave in that end from the very beginning where your magic ring was, and then your hat is done. Alrighty guys, at this point you should now have a lovely hat just like this one. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did watch it, make sure you like this video and share it with your friends. And if you're interested, feel free to subscribe, as I do post new videos every week. Sometimes they're just general things about my life as a crochet business owner, but I do post tutorials probably about once a month, so make sure you subscribe. While you guys are making your hats, if you come across any issues or if you have any questions, absolutely leave them in the comments and I'll be happy to help you. Like I mentioned at the beginning, if you do make your own hat, you can absolutely sell it. Just make sure you credit me as the pattern designer. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye.